Hi, I'm Harford County Executive Bob Castley, and you're listening to the Maryland Association of Counties Conduit Street Podcast, featuring in-depth interviews and discussions with state and county leaders on the issues that affect us all.
Welcome back to the Conduit Street Podcast. This is your host, Michael Sanderson. Delighted to have an opportunity to talk with a friend of mine, someone I've made an acquaintance with in recent years at Mako events and when we've run in similar circles together. And I think this conversation will be good for those of you who listen to the podcast. You're interested in public policy, you're interested in politics, and sort of all the things that we do in the public sector. I'm excited to have as our guest for this episode, Roger Hartley, professor at the University of Baltimore School of Public Affairs. Professor, thanks very much for joining us.
Hey, Mike, thank you so much. I really appreciate the invite. I absolutely have enjoyed becoming your friend over the years and certainly of many of the county leaders in our state. So really appreciate it.
So glad you could clear some time. And I feel like we've got a handful of things that made sense to talk about. You and I were having a little chat about what we might be able to do in this space and with the listeners for the podcast. And there's a number of things going on at the university that are exciting about, but maybe start with a little bit you've got a transition afoot and taking some time and that sort of thing. So tell our listeners about your station with the University of Baltimore and that kind of stuff. Why are you on this podcast?
Oh, gosh. Yeah. Thank you so much. Well, I am a big supporter of Mako, the counties and cities of the town. You all may know, some of you may know me as having been Dean of the College of Public Affairs at the University of Baltimore. You just mentioned it, but I just wrapped up 10 and a half years of service in that role as Dean. It was absolutely a great opportunity to hand off the leadership to members of my team that I've built over the years. And with that, I have a one-year leave, and then I'll go back to teaching or doing some other area of leadership in the future. But I was really excited. I wear several hats in my professional life, and one of them not only was leading this terrific college, which I can talk a little bit more about what we do, but the other is one of the reasons I decided to step back is this is a really important moment in time for public service at the federal, state, and local level. And I'm privileged to have been elected to be the president-elect of the American Society of Public Administration, which is a national organization made up of leaders in government, but also academics. And so I'm going to get a chance to spend a lot more time on that. And I'm working with some other associations like the National Academy of Public Administration and some others like the Volcker Alliance. Really wanted to put some more time in public service too. So I've applied for some boards and commissions at the state level and also here in Baltimore at the city of Baltimore. So I'm really excited about my new role, but I'm also excited to work with you and your team more in the coming years as well.
I think there's that old saying that if you want to get something done, find the busiest person you know, and that's the person who gets stuff done. You describing all the different hats that you wear and the different sort of pots you get your fingers into, it just makes me think of that. You're a go-to person for a lot of interesting, innovative thoughts and ideas. So one of the things I like about spending time with you is you've always got some sort of titillating idea. Hey, have you ever thought about this? So I think it makes good ground for us to try and cover in this format, a little informal conversation for the benefit of our listeners. But like maybe the next direction is talk about some of the things that the College of Public Affairs has gotten invested in and does. There's a number of these things that are in the public space that you've seen Mako as a collaborator on. So talk through some of the offerings that the University of Baltimore has launched to the benefit of the greater Baltimore area, the state of Maryland, and our sort of public sector generally.
Absolutely. Thank you for asking that. In the 10 and a half years that I served as dean, I got an incredible opportunity to work with and build a great team here. And some of the things that we do in the College of Public Affairs that you may or may not know about, but we're a college that's completely dedicated to public service. And we do that in grad and undergrad and professional programs in criminal justice administration. We also have several programs in public and international affairs, graduate and undergraduate, and even some graduate certificates. And then we have professors and faculty in programs in health and human services as well. So I came here years ago because it was really a comprehensive kind of college that really delves into and hits every area of public service that we have, and not all schools like ours around the nation do. We also have some really important centers that have offered some programs that the counties in Maryland have taken advantage of, and we would really invite you to take advantage of them if you haven't. The Schaefer Center for Public Policy offers the Certified Public Manager program, which is offered free to state and local government leaders all over the state. And we've had many county leaders that have graduated from that program or that are in it. And again, all over the state, not just in Baltimore and Baltimore County, but Eastern Shore, Western Maryland. In fact, the only county that we had not yet served, and I was able to track them down at the winter meetings, was Garrett County. And I've got some really exciting contacts there, and I think they're excited to have their team in the CPM. We also have a Next Gen Leaders in Public Service program that many counties and local governments and state agencies have taken advantage of. We literally offer a paid public service internship. We pay the students $15 an hour, and we have placed them all over the state. They're juniors, seniors, and grad students, and from any field at the University of Baltimore, the law school, the business school, IT, or any of our programs. And Michael, we've just crossed a big landmark for us. We've had over 600 placements around the state since 2022, and over 100,000 paid public service hours by our students since 2022. It's a marvelous team. And again, if you're just hearing about this program, I'd really invite you to contact me or our Schaefer Center for Public Policy so we could get you in contact. But that's not all. We have a center that some of you may know as the Washington-Baltimore HIDA, the High Impact Drug Trafficking Area, that does work all over the state and region in drug enforcement, but also prevention and treatment. And we have a third center called the Center for Advancing Prevention Excellence, which does technical assistance all over the nation, but certainly in Maryland, on preventing risky behaviors like drugs, suicide, and others. And they've been doing work, and many communities in our state have worked with that center. And lastly, brand new center called the Center for Justice Impacted Students. We have about 50 men inside of Jessup Correctional Institution that are earning a degree right now. Some of them have been released and have come to our campus to finish their degrees, and some have moved on to get graduate degrees after they've graduated. It is a very moving experience to meet these students because they value education at a level that I quite frankly have never seen, even as a first-gen college graduate myself. So anyway, that was a lot to hit you with, but we're doing a lot at UB, but also certainly in the College of Public Affairs, and I'm really proud that it's touched almost every part of our state.
Right. I mean, I can't help but think in all these different offerings and different elements that the university has launched, within the College of Public Affairs and elsewhere, it just feels like it's almost a revisioning of the higher education mission to some degree. Like this is a whole suite of offerings that are, none of them are the conventional, come to us, sit in this room, take this exact schedule of these courses and get this vanilla degree. I mean, the university still does that as well, but to try and meet needs where you find them. And if I'm a big fan of the certified public manager program that you mentioned. I've described it frequently as, you're running the park and rec department, and you've got a superstar young staff person, and she doesn't have the academic background, but she has all the right stuff, right? Like the right attitude, and you see leadership potential, but she doesn't have the sort of academic background on how to do budgeting or personnel or stuff like that. And the CPM program is just custom built for, let's get her the stuff she needs, not necessarily a whole like master's degree program, but get her the things that she needs so that she can be the leader we think is hidden in there, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned two things, but first on that I think is really important. That program and other graduate certificates that we have in multiple fields, we have about 8 others. That program, though, specifically is really accessible and it's really built for that person who's in the middle of the organization, who's being asked to step up into leadership really quickly. One of the concerns that all of us have, I think, together is that we're seeing at the federal, state, and local government level that our public servants are aging. Many are retiring. Many are leaving, unfortunately, for other
Yeah.
sectors. And with that, it used to be that you could kind of mentor somebody into that leadership role, but now it's almost like a battlefield promotion for some people. You're asked to step in, and this is where, education, meeting people where they are, is so critically important, especially for those 3 to 5 to 7 years in. They need that leadership training. So a law enforcement officer who's been on the job for 10 years may have an associate's degree, but is now asked to be a sergeant or a captain. Here's that opportunity to learn some of those things that are needed to be as successful as a leader. Now, one other thing that you mentioned that I'm really passionate about, and this is something I'm going to be doing a lot more work on in this year of leave and going forward right now, is something you mentioned. I went to Mako for the first time probably about 9 years ago. And when I first showed up, I think a lot of folks were thinking, why is this dean guy here? Why is higher ed here? I feel quite strongly that higher education needs to do a better job of connecting. We were for a long time isolated in our fields. And I'm really proud that the University of Baltimore and the University System Maryland schools really pride themselves on doing public engagement and really breaking out of their campuses to get to where leaders are. And quite honestly, I think we need to do more of that. And I also think counties and city leaders also need to meet us somewhere in the middle. There's rich opportunity for us to partner, and I think we've demonstrated that. And I've learned so much by going to Mako and the Maryland Municipal League meetings, both, first of all, about the needs of our counties that none of my colleagues who show up know. And at the same time, I've been able to build contacts for students and even sometimes a need that you might have for a research study to be done by our Schaefer Center comes up. My goal going forward is to really introduce some models, and I can talk about them later, but models of how, higher ed can meet government and magic can happen. And I've got a lot of experience of that because, frankly, you all were so inviting and welcoming to me when I came to Mako.
Well, that's a two-way street, right? I mean, it's the best version of that kind of relationship. If you start coming to the events for MML and Mako, and you start connecting with leaders, both political leaders and like dedicated professionals who are at those events and talking. I mean, I know I've been in a room with you multiple times when you would go sit in with like our human resources staff for counties. You're thinking about the public sector workplace, and so are they. And like sitting in and hearing those conversations, you come away thinking differently about what our needs might be. And we come away with a potential partner that you're motivated to find something that's a better fit. We both win when that kind of exchange takes place. So I'm happy to try and put together good places for that sort of stuff to sort of happen on its own.
Oh, absolutely. The way you described that was perfect. I mean, I never assumed that I know, even though I feel like I know a lot about law and courts and public administration, that doesn't mean that I know the rich amount of knowledge that people who do the work do all the time. I have learned a ton by going to those sessions, like you just said, and come back to my school and been able to say to our faculty, hey, you know what? You should go too. But secondly, if you can't go for any any reason, these are the issues that our counties are talking about right now. These are their needs. This is what they need from our students. And we can build that into our curriculum and prepare people for the jobs that you're really looking for right now. So that and so much more. Yeah, it is a two-way street. And my goal going forward is to make that street really easy to go down for people.
Right. Yeah, I think there's an analogy there that I don't know. This might get a little tortured, but I'll give it a try. We hear this a lot. Like part of Maryland's success is we end up with a workplace here. We have a good education infrastructure, both sort of pre-K through 12 and then into higher education. And if you locate your company in Maryland, you're going to be confident that you've got a lot of ready to go workers. If you're in cybersecurity, we're going to have a lot of people here who have the STEM background and exposure to those sorts of things academically, and that they can be ready to go, maybe more so than other parts of the country that don't have that same infrastructure. And it seems to me that your intuition is kind of the same thing, that we need to generate people who will be plug and play in the public sector. Like, we need leaders to help in public safety and in public education and in all these different fields in the public sector. And we don't think of that quite the same way as you do with professional degrees, training as an engineer or in the medical field or whatever. But it's not as far removed as it might feel. And having an institution like UB be as creative and flexible as you're shown to be, I think is the way to have that atmosphere where the people are available and we can kind of rethink what the public sector workplace can look like and where they come from.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. And I think everyone that's listening knows this, but I'll add to what you just said. Public sector, private sector, and nonprofit sectors locate in, well, especially private sector businesses locate in places where they have a rich and well-educated workforce. It is absolutely without question that when a company's looking to locate in a state or a city or a county, they are looking at the demographics of that county and that city, and they're looking at whether they're going to be able to find employees that they need and like you said, ready made. But the other thing about that I'm advancing kind of broadly as an idea, we hear the term university extension, right? And university extension often means agriculture. And what I've learned over the years by getting out there is if you go to an extension to a county or an extension office, that extension officer knows everyone in that county, and everyone in that county probably knows that extension officer. So I've started talking about this, and I might write about it a little bit. What if universities were not just doing agricultural extension, but what if we were able to create and help partner and listen to the needs of a state or a county and bring, say, community development to all of those extension offices all over the state? So not just agriculture, but what are the problems that a Main Street needs inside of a county seat? Or what are some of the problems that a county is needing that universities might be able to help with? And I think that would help build trust with higher education and its citizens if we are much more useful. So I'm advancing a broader idea that we should extend extension beyond its traditional, corn cows and other things.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of folks think of the old land grant university models and the ag extension. I grew up in Ohio, and like Ohio State has physical buildings all over the state, and it's there for the benefit of farmers and the ag community. But the idea of that concept applying in other fields is like a pretty interesting concept, a pretty interesting idea, I think.
Yeah, I'm hopeful that, it can gain a little traction. And some states do more. I mean, they may offer legal clinics and advice and things like that. But that's just another way I think our counties and municipalities can work with higher ed if we work to partner more effectively.
Yeah, I like it. I would say, like, I think like the mission in the public sector has also expanded a bit beyond maybe the four corners of what we thought as the public sector's duty, 20, 40,
Mhm.
60 years ago. And to the extent that we're thinking today about resilience and, response to climate change and like a variety of other longer term missions, sort of like custodial responsibilities, whether that's environmental or whether it's about energy or our overall infrastructure or the issue of the moment is housing. All of these, they have a different kind of a footprint than just the old school, like pave the roads.
Yeah.
And it may be that having a think tank or a trusted partner to help you think through some of these complicated matters could be just the recipe for a county, for a town, for a state government, or whomever trying to solve those larger, longer term problems. I'm interested there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what you're describing, and we all know, are really complex societal problems and complex natural problems, even with respect to climate change. And those are really interdisciplinary. It's not a one-trick solution to those problems, like all of our problems that governments face. Criminal justice issues and others are really multifaceted, and one approach only, one way of thinking only doesn't get us there. And that's where I think, labs or think tanks or, putting our heads together. I'll give you one example of
Mhm.
something our center that holds the Washington Baltimore HIDA did. They were able to work on a community focused strategic plan in a county in West Virginia around Martinsburg that focused on a multifaceted solution to their drug overdose problem. And so they brought together community leaders from health, education, law enforcement, federal, state, and local universities all into a room, and they worked together and put together a plan. And they didn't always agree on the way that drug abuse should be attacked. There were real differences that came out, but they left with what's now called the Martinsburg Initiative. And it's a really impressive strategic plan for how they work together across sectors and across divisions politically to really try to focus on saving lives. And, those are the kind of things that we can all do, I think, with breaking out of our silos a little bit.
Right, right. I mean, but I think that's we use that term silos as a little bit of shade on what tends to happen in large organizations, and governments sometimes tend to drift that way. And each agency feels like they've got a piece of the larger problem, but they tend to look downward rather than outward. So the wraparound approach for the jurisdiction in West Virginia to say this is a community problem, but it's not just public safety, it's not just education, it's not just family services, but it's all those things. Like we've got models of that here in Maryland. We have at the county level, we have local management boards that try and do similar sort of things for children who are sort of at risk and families who are at risk. But I think models like that, they don't necessarily transport. You probably can't take that model from Martinsburg, West Virginia, and say let's just
Mhm.
do the exact same thing in St. Mary's County, Maryland. But the mentality can pick up and move from place to place.
Yeah, absolutely. The idea of bringing together the right stakeholders, they may
Yeah.
not be the same stakeholders, to your point, on different problems or in different communities. Absolutely. And, I'm also very sympathetic to the fact that, you know, people who are working as public servants are doing a lot with very little. And it is hard sometimes to say, well, yeah, in my free time, I will try. And it's not free time. I know
Right.
that. But
Right.
to do that kind of work in a different way requires effort on top of the effort. And we have to then think about and design, we know that from public administration that policy is delivered in networks. It's not delivered necessarily top down from one organization, but it's cross networks. And everyone that's listening to this right here knows that probably more than I do, to be honest. You're working with nonprofits, private sector leaders, and other governments to try to get things done and accomplished. So then how do we build organizations that foster that and make it easier to do that is kind of the structure that we have to figure out how to build. And some people have done it really well in Maryland, in different parts of the state and all over the nation.
I like the way you think about the mission, the sort of higher education mission, but also where it bleeds into public service and where the two can sort of can coexist and have a symbiotic relationship. I like the way you think about things. It's one of the things I've enjoyed getting to know you and know the kind of person you are, and you always have something ready to go. There's folks I bump into you at the MML conference, and we chat for a couple of minutes, and I can always just say, so what's on your mind? And you always have something like in the clip ready to go to talk about. Hey, I got this really cool idea. What do you think of this? You're that guy. I like it.
Thank you. Thank you. I really enjoy talking with you about ideas too, because you have incredible ones and you're just a mine of information, you and the teams that you work with all over the state. So I get pretty inspired by just listening and learning. And next thing you know, my mind starts working and I think, oh, what if we could do this? And they're not always good ideas, but I appreciate that we get to talk about them some. I really do.
No, I think that fail forward mentality, right? If you don't have a bunch of crumpled up paper around your waste paper basket, you're not writing enough. And it's the same thing. If you don't have some stinker ideas in the mix, then you haven't had enough ideas. So I'm a big believer on you. You either win or you learn. Both of those are fine.
Yeah, absolutely.
So forgive me, and I hope our listeners will forgive me, but when you and I get to talking, we tend to start with the public sector mission, and we're talking about the workforce and some new clever idea that you're cooking up and that sort of thing. And then from time to time, we end up starting to talk about music, and it feels like you and I have some similar tastes in music. I don't know. We seem to have a pretty good oval in our respective Venn diagram of stuff that we like. And you've sent me in the direction of digging up some music I didn't know about. And now some of that stuff's in regular play for me. So I appreciate friends like that. So I don't want to miss an opportunity here. I know the weather is cold, and if you're anything like me, when the weather gets cold as we're recording, that tends to be like end of year, the best of 2025 list.
Yes.
Things along those lines. So tell me, like, what are you listening to? What should our Conduit Street Podcast faithful dig into on the music front? Hit me with some good recommendations. I'll share one.
Oh gosh, I was looking back. I listen sometimes on Spotify and on iTunes and others, and they do these sometimes like magically put together your playlist,
right.
what you listened to the most last year, and then also what's new. I have very eclectic tastes, and in fact, just to your point, I'm right now trying to go through. It's a magazine, an online magazine, Pitchfork's top 50 albums of the year, and I always do that at the end of the year because forces me to listen to new stuff, but it also forces me to listen to things that I don't normally listen to. But there's a bunch here that I would like to throw out, and some of them might be on each other's list. But you mentioned when we saw each other, and I had not yet listened to her, but that Rosalie album is amazing. You were right. I really, really appreciated you bringing that one up. And it was on the list, and I just listened to it last week, and she sounds like a Latina Kate Bush to me, almost, is what I first started thinking about. But just incredible stuff.
Yeah, I'm open to the answer being that I'm just a rube and that I don't really know enough about classical music or opera or waltzes and so forth to separate out the difference between high-minded music and whatever it is that she's doing. But it seems like a blend of pop and rap and all those different sources, and I find it absolutely fascinating. I've probably spun that album 20 times in the last month, and I'm riveted by her. So Rosalia, like top of my list for 2025. I can't get enough of it.
Oh gosh, yeah, I totally see why. A couple others, there's probably more than a couple
Yeah.
others. I sometimes listen to indie rock like you do, and sometimes punk and some other things, but I also find some stuff that, I don't always listen to. So if you like hip hop or rap at all, a guy named Billy Woods is awesome. He has a
Hmm.
album called Gollywog, and he also kind of plays with another, or sing or works with another guy for a group they call Arm and Hammer. But smart, incredible lyrics, really, really neat stuff, and it's almost intellectual beyond intellectual at times, but it's great. There's one that I found called Nourished by Time. And it turns out he calls himself this, and I can't remember his actual name, but it turns out he's from Baltimore, but he's now living in London and he's kind of blowing up. And that's a little bit sort of like alternative R&B, little bit of jazz, but it's really good stuff. I love the album by Wednesday. If you like a little bit of twang in your morning and or even a little bit of hard rock mixed with country twang,
Hmm.
Wednesday from Asheville. The album's called Bleeds is great. I loved Alex G's new album. It's really clever and really, kind of quiet too. It's not super loud, but I loved it. There's one, if you do like loud, and I mean really loud, from Chicago, a band called Lifeguard. They had an album called Ripped and Torn, and it was
Hmm.
really, really great. And they're post-punk. That's all I can say. So if you don't like
Right.
that, don't listen
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
them. Not you. I know you do,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I'm just
No.
saying to everybody, if you don't like that, do
Right.
not pick up this album. It's pretty good. And there's more, but I'd love to hear yours.
Yeah, no, I'm scribbling notes, and I will probably go back and listen to this, and we'll put a couple notes in the show notes for people to dig into some of this stuff on their own. I would say I'm fascinated by this band Geese,
Yeah.
who I think like they've gotten crazy big in exactly sort of I don't know, like the alt music, like dude rock
Yeah.
genre. So it's almost like it's out of a laboratory for guys like me. And I've listened to them a bit. I think they're fine, but I also I'm not quite sure. I see that this is the next generation of what's going to happen with music. I thought they're fun. Like, if you like I don't know, if you like the Avits, or a little twang, like you said, okay, I can see it, but I'm not sure it's Wilco Part Two necessarily. And
Oh,
anyway, I have complicated thoughts about Geese, but apparently men of my age are supposed to be listening to Geese. The algorithm
I
tells
I totally agree with you. I like them, and I'm still like, huh, I like them, huh? Meaning I don't know how to figure them out exactly. They're definitely very diverse, kind of all over the place. I mean, it's not the same music, but there's a band from Britain called Black Midi, which is also like you listen to one of those albums and you're going, what just happened? And then I guess one of the I don't know if it's the singer or the guitarist, but there's a guy named Cameron Winter that's in the band, and he has a solo album this year that's also really being talked about a lot. But yeah, I like Geese. And another one that kind of falls in that category for me that I've discovered last week on that top 50 list is Caroline. They have an album called Caroline 2, and I listened to it, and sometimes it sounds country, sometimes it sounds indie rock, sometimes, I mean, it's just really complex, but really good music. So I'm kind of listening to that now. And then if you really like sort of like club dance music that's even industrial, like if you like Nine Inch Nails, look up Model Actress.
Hmm.
Um,
Okay.
Totally awesome. Not for everybody, I will say that,
Right.
but
Yeah.
totally, totally awesome.
All right, I dig it. I dig it. This could go. You and I could end up spending an hour and a half on this, and we may have to move this into the subscriber only feed. The special Patreon feed for the music selections. But I love hearing. Honestly, my favorite way to find new music is have a friend tell me you'd really like this. Go listen to it 3 or 4 times, and that's my favorite thing to do. So now I've got a whole bunch of directions to go dig into. When you get to the end of that Pitchfork albums of the year list, their number one album of the year is by like a couple of music makers. They're Bolivian Americans, and
Yeah.
they threw in together and created. I think it's just like a one-off, construct, sort of an ad hoc mini band called Los Teutonica. And
Really?
I think you have to listen to it on Bandcamp. It's not on the ordinary streaming sources. I've been able to find the whole album is on YouTube, and I've given that 8 or 10 spins. And it's supposed to be like walking room to room to room to room through a massive dance club, and it is
No
it is
kidding.
is an instrumental experience that I wasn't sure I was ready for. But now that I've heard it 3 or 4 times, I kind of know the flow a little bit. It's not bad background music as long as you don't mind like breathing a little bit heavy. So
I can't wait to listen to that one. I'm on I think I'm on number 11 right now. So I've got a few more to go to get there, but I can't wait.
good.
They did that to us last year too.
Right,
They put number one, Cindy Lee from
right,
Toronto, and that was similar. You couldn't find it anywhere except on
right,
Bandcamp. And
right.
even now it's not on streaming services. But talk about an interesting record. That one was really unusual and cool for
Yeah.
sure.
I mean, there is obviously like we all fall victim to this like cleverer than thou. It's like, oh, you can't just say you like the Black Keys because now everybody likes the Black Keys. And so you have to move on to, yeah, this little outfit out of, it's not really Portland, it's sort of Eastern Oregon, blah blah.
Yeah.
Everybody almost like wants to one up one another. So this idea of the Bolivian guys and their dance music is like me probably fulfilling a bad stereotype there, I suppose.
Completely true. Yeah, yeah. And I hope I don't come across that way myself, but yeah, I'm sure it's easy to do. It's like, oh, I discovered something, but you really didn't. Somebody else really likes them. And but I'm like you, I just love music. I love listening to new stuff and the top 50 list every year. During COVID, my big project, I always do some kind of weird, I'm gonna do this or that in the coming year. And during COVID, I decided to listen to the all 500 of the best 500 albums of all time by Rolling Stone. And I
Okay.
did it in a year, and it was absolutely incredible. And I listened to stuff that I just never would have listened to, and that I even looked down upon once. And then I listened to stuff that I'd never imagined that I would see in the same way, like, the first Led Zeppelin album. I'm like,
Hmm.
well, of course I've heard those songs, but
Right.
I never sat down and listened to the whole album for whatever reason, and it was really cool.
I like it. There's a lot to be said of the best in breed. Almost no matter what category of music, you find some of the good stuff that folks who know it would recommend to you. It's a good way to get exposed to stuff. And like I try to be eclectic. I don't think I'm at your level, but I like to splash around a little bit too. So, and hey, I open the door for you to jump through and drop some suggestions. So if we're guilty of this kind of navel gazing, I brought it on. It's on. It was
we both did it to each other, and thanks for your recs. And send me any of your recs in the future. I've got another wild project I was going to tell you about, but you may have other questions.
So yeah, I mean that's a good place. Like what else didn't we get into that we could close on? You got one more thing to share with me and with our listeners?
Well, this is a kind of a fun personal thing that I committed myself to do, and but I think it's going to be kind of cool, and I'm hoping that it might be of interest to just members of Mako, if nothing else, that I'm going to visit your county. So the other hobby I have is craft beer, and for years I've been going to breweries. And so I finally just decided that given that I have a little more time, I am going to visit every brewery in the state of Maryland. There's 122 of them. I've already been to about a quarter of them in my life, but literally I looked at the list and it's like there are 3, maybe 4 in Garrett County.
Right.
And I'm kind of hoping that when I go and do these little trips that I'm actually going to try to find some way to kind of record it on a Substack or even just kind of put out there, just, doing little interviews with the breweries and meet people and just kind of see the towns. And I think it's going to be a whole lot of, well, no, it's going to be a whole lot of fun for me, but literally there are 122 all over the state, new ones that I've never heard of. And I'm kind of hoping that when I go do those visits that I get a chance to meet some Mako folks if I'm able to. So if anybody wants to have a beer, I would be thrilled to buy and meet at your local brewery if I get out your way.
I love that. Even if it were merely a pretense, the idea to, break bread and talk about things that, that are back home for the folks who are the practitioners in this public space. Hey, if finding common ground at the local brew pub is the way to do it, more power to you both. I love it.
I remember Peter Franchot did a little bit of that when he was comptroller, but the thing that I've always loved about craft beer beyond just the beer itself is back when I was in North Carolina, I really noticed that, the economic development that a brewery brings to a small town and just even community building that it brings to a small town is kind of fascinating. I mean, and I've seen it here in Maryland too. There are literally people like me, beer geeks all over the country and world that will go specifically to a town just because they have a brewery. And next thing you know, you find when you go in that the whole community's there, people from every walk of life and their kids and their dogs. And it's just kind of a cool little subculture, I guess, if nothing else.
Right. Great way to collect stories from all those communities. That's a good spot to do that. So to our listeners, I think now you get the idea of what I had in mind to bring Professor Roger Hartley onto the podcast, talk a little bit about the University of Baltimore, talk about his mission in public affairs, maybe even a little bit of music and craft beer along the way. But Roger, thanks very much for clearing some time to chat with us. Really enjoyed having you on the pod.
Hey, thank you for inviting me. It's so awesome. I'd love to do it again anytime.
That sounds great. Folks, that'll wrap up this episode. As always, if you enjoy the Conduit Street podcast, make sure you subscribe and get it delivered right to the vehicle of your choice so you can listen at your leisure. I'll give thanks to our producer, Chantel Malcolm Lim, for pulling together this episode as always. And with that, we will talk to you soon.